Kevin Bowen here. Don't forget to listen to The Fan now on 93.5 or 107.5 FM, and check out our latest coverage online at 1075thefan.com.
It is Indy 500 week here in the city that never sleeps. It's Naptown. We're back. Kevin Bowen, Chris Presley, early on a Monday morning. We've got we do have a little bit of Colts stuff to get to, but this is all about the race here in Indianapolis, the state of Indiana, and thousands flocking to our great state this weekend. I can't wait for it, Chris Presley. I am a Stan J sitter, stander for some of the race, sitter for most, though.
Is that where you posted the photo from yesterday?
Yesterday we were kind of the end of the front straight, almost turn one, to watch the Fast 9 and the last row shootout. Boy, it was hot out there.
Yeah.
Whew. But it felt good. It was a good workout, honestly. You just sweat and you feel like you've accomplished something. But yeah, I can't wait. You know, a lot of these events, you're there and you're kind of covering it. This is one of my few kind of fully invested as a fan. So I can't wait. And we do have some Colt stuff to get to. So let me tease that as well. I was out there at practice on Thursday. We'll be back out there again this Thursday. Their final week of this shortened off-season spring program. So we'll get into some takeaways that I observed last Thursday, and then a nice variety of Twitter questions. I felt like there was a good mix this week. So not a super long pod, but we'll definitely hit on those as well. Shout out to PropSwap, as always, for sponsoring this edition and every edition of Kevin's Corner. Right now in PropSwap, Chris Presley, we've got Indy 500 tickets available. Joseph Newgarden, Colton Herta, Alexander Rossi. Mr. Rossi, 14-1. Colton Herta, 13-1. I think those are extremely enticing odds for those two drivers.
I do as well. I know towards the end of the podcast, we'll probably give our selections on who we think will cross the row of bricks first. So I don't want to tip my hand too much, but one of those three guys you just mentioned, that's going to be my pick.
Yeah, I've invested about $150 so far in Indy 500 bets, trying to cover all bases. Scott Dixon, we'll just hedge with him. And then, Alexander Rossi, those are really good odds, man, inside of row 4. And then Herta, I mean, he's been just as fast as Dixon really all month long. Right. And there he is. Granted, he's young and he's crazy, but sometimes that works. Crazy at least works. I don't know about young. Again, the 100% match deposit bonus. I know a lot of you DM me asking about this. Promo code GUIDE, GUIDE. So that is a 100% match deposit bonus up to $500 from PropSwap. So make sure you guys check that out. And, should we get into it?
Yeah, odds with racing are great. Odds with golf are great as well. And yesterday, Phil Mickelson.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm a certified Phil hater. I guess I should openly admit that. You can't love Tiger and like Phil. That's just part of fandom. So I hate Phil. Granted, I'm not a big Brooks Koepka guy, and as much as I love Louis Oosthuizen's golf swing, I don't know if he does a lot for me in the cheering. I wanted a little bit more drama, if I'm going to be picky. I thought Phil would give us that. Phil's crazy.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, Chris, that was one of the top 3 or 4 moments in my lifetime in the game of golf. And again, I say that as a Phil hater, but that was damn special to watch. I can't believe he did it.
Yeah.
Especially on that golf course.
And great to see the crowds out there again like that.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I got a little nervous there in 18. They're going to take Phil down. But, Koepka, you could tell, was not happy about that. Granted, Koepka doesn't look happy about very many things in life. So shout out Phil, whatever. All I know is that it'll make Tiger hungry. It'll make Tiger hungry to want to come back.
Great crowds at the golf outing this weekend. Crowds finally out at the Colts complex for you guys with the media. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys saw last week.
Yeah, there's about, 9 or 10 of us that are out there, and it sounds like training camp will be at Grand Park again this year, and really looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll get official word kind of on start date and whatnot here. You assume late July, but who knows exactly when things will get started. I do want to preface with this, Chris. I think there's a little bit of, just kind of unknown, or people aren't really sure about exactly what is going on and how intense these sessions are. No helmets, no full pads, no offense, defense, and not even one-on-ones. I was a little bit disappointed by that.
Mm-hmm.
I get the no offense defense, but I thought you'd see some, hey, Rock Yassin, here's Paris Campbell, go. Or, I guess O-line, D-line one-on-ones are a little bit more intense, but, Sam Tevy, here's Ben Banagu, something like that. But we're not even seeing that. So calling it a sped-up walkthrough would probably be a bit unfair. I mean, they are going close to full speed, probably actually full speed, but it's never like in a competitive setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's routes versus air. The defense, it's incredible watching the defense and just how much they preach, stamina and, wind during these sessions. I mean, they're working up a sweat, and these D linemen are running their ass off from drill to drill and whatnot. But I still think it's nice just to see body types. I think it's good to see what guys look like even in these kind of individual periods. It's good to take attendance, frankly, just to see who's in there, who's not in there, injury situations during the offseason and whatnot. And it's something. It's good to get eyes on the 2021 Colts, granted in a small setting. So feel free to interject if you've got any comments, Chris. I'll start with Wentz. I'd say something that we've grown accustomed to as either Colt fans or covers of the Colts, if that's a word. Colts have massive quarterbacks. Like, huge.
Size-wise, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Luck is 6'4", 230, and he's like the smallest of the four they've had. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jacoby's every bit as big as Andrew, if not probably a little bit bigger. Rivers is 6'5", 240. And then you look at Wentz, I think he's listed at 6'5", 237. So that's right there and bigger than Andrew and Jacoby. So it's the size, but then it's the movement. You watch him and Jacob Eason throw, and it's very similar. When you went from Rivers to Brissett, starter to backup, boy, stark contrast in how the ball comes out. It's very similar with Wentz and Eason. But then when you watch them do like rollouts
Mm-hmm.
or sprint outs or even like a little bit of RPO stuff, I mean, Wentz can move.
Yeah.
And maybe, again, I'm so ingrained to watching Rivers do those drills last year, so anything looks, frankly, like Scott Dixon-like speed out on the practice field. But in all seriousness, like Wentz, you watch him and you're like, that dude was a number 2 overall pick. Like they're just raw traits that his ability to throw the ball down the field and then his ability to move. Yeah, it stands out. There's an effortless throwing arm strength to him, and now it's obviously up to Frank Reich to get right. I get him right. I posted an article this morning, Monday morning, on 1075thefan.com. I asked Frank last week, is Carson broken? Or I guess I didn't ask him that directly. I asked him, what do you kind of say to those people that have associated that word? And I thought Frank was extremely candid, so I encourage people to check that out. And it's just a lot to work with for Frank. Now, obviously, these settings are much different than red jersey is off or even the red jersey's on and it's offense, defense, and things like that. So I'd say that's the first thing that jumped out to me Wentz-related.
It was good to see Mack and Campbell back.
Yeah, I would say that.
They both looked very, very good.
Yeah, let's start with Campbell. 100% cleared now 2 weeks ago, I think it is, as we record this. I say we forget. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking about myself. I forget that not only is this dude 4.31 in the 40, him and Hines ran the fastest 40 at their respective positions at the combine back-to-back years. He's pretty well built. He's 6'2", 205. Like, this is not a slight human being. His injuries are not because he's Rondell Moore size or whatever. He is pretty thick, isn't the right word, but he fills out his frame very well. I don't know what it'll do to his confidence, Chris, but I would like to think him being healthy in mid-May does something for him mentally. We also have gotten players over Zoom here over the last now 2 weeks. Campbell's always very honest. Boy, that's got to be tough for him. I mean, beyond tough. I've thrown out some of these numbers. It's crazy. He's caught balls in 3 games since his first month of his rookie season. 3 games. I mean, Colts have played nearly 30 games in that span. So I feel you almost feel bad asking him some of these questions, but you have to. He is just adamant that it's like, I cannot go there mentally. Because if I go there mentally, now I play timid, now I play scared, and if I'm playing timid or scared, I'm not a massive asset to this offense.
Mm-hmm.
If he's healthy and he's confident, I mean, he's one of the more indispensable players in this offense. And I know that might sound a bit hyperbole, but I really believe that. So, yeah, the fact that he's out there, obviously Mac, when you think about it, Chris, all Achilles are different, but, this isn't Achilles rehab. He didn't do a whole lot, if I'm not mistaken, last Thursday, but he's definitely doing something. Yeah. And, it could just be, one day on, one day off. Maybe he did Monday, Wednesday last week, and, we just happened to be out there on a Thursday. It's funny watching, or I should say listening to Jonathan Taylor. Man, does he sound different a year later. I felt like a bit overwhelmed early in that rookie season. Admitted that. Sounds much different to me. And I feel like at times we kind of forget about Taylor. And again, I'm probably at fault for that. But the sure things you don't often focus a whole lot on.
Right.
Holy shit, man. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor stays healthy, it's Derrick Henry, and you don't go too far down the list before you're naming Jonathan Taylor in the NFL, which obviously that is huge for Carson Wentz. The wideouts, that group is just big. Pittman, Mike Strawn, and Desmond Patman.
Right.
I watching the Pacers Thursday night. I'm like, oh boy, Pacers. Pacers could use anybody at that point. But oh boy, that reminds me, we probably got to do a Pacers podcast here.
Oh yeah,
somewhat soon. We should maybe let the dust settle a little bit. Kevin Pritchard going to talk to the media here later today. But the Colts have always searched for those big wideouts, and those are, big dudes. Funchess obviously was kind of the start of it all, but now you've backed that up, and it'll be fascinating to see what Strawn and Patman look like once things get a little bit more real. Patman changed his jersey number to 10, so when do you go, 85 maybe, 80-something last year?
I believe so, yeah.
So, yeah.
So this obviously the sex appeals there on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at, when you guys go out to practice, the average fan or even media member probably, you can see a quarterback throw the ball. You can see a wide receiver catch the ball. What do you guys look for on the defensive side of things when they're not doing one-on-ones?
Yeah, it's difficult. Honestly, the first thing you just look at is who is where, like who is with the starters, who is not. Kwity Paye kind of rotating. Al-Qadim Muhammad didn't work the day we were there. I'm trying to think who else. Toure didn't work. Still has kind of that small brace. He had that offseason surgery to get a little bit of a chip out of his ankle. Which is a big bummer that, Toure has also missed so much practice time in his NFL career. But I'm not shocked by that. I think Paye will be a day one starter once you get there. But, it's a rookie in his, his second or third week on a practice field. So I mentioned earlier, no Rhodes out there. I didn't see Hines. Obviously, Eric Fisher isn't working. I think Nelson's a little bit limited. I heard, he kind of had a couple cleanups in the offseason. I think he's a little bit limited. I'm trying to think who else. I think those are kind of the big names. So, defensively, I know a lot of my colleagues have talked about it. Dayo Dangbo, even though he's not working, boy, you talk about just a big human. And, 20, whatever he is, 21, 22 years old. I know Chris Ballard has compared his body type a lot to Buckner's. To me, Buckner is a little bit more, which is wild to say about a guy that's 6'7", 295, just a little bit slender, or he just carries his weight extremely well. And I feel like Dayo is a little bit thicker in the chest area. Boy, we're really getting in depth here with describing some of these body types. But you know what? Welcome to May 24th over Kevin's Corner.
Hey.
I should note that Dangbo's body fat when he came here for rookie minicamp was unbelievably good, and how well and that's 3 months, 4 months post Achilles. But to me, as I get a big yawn here, to me it is a little bit of Dayo, just a hair thicker than Buckner.
Okay.
I want to say Dangbo is listed at 6'5", 276. I think he's a lot bigger than that, to be frank. And Buckner, again, 6'7", 295. So But obviously what you see is just dudes at arms just hang down. Yeah, I'm just like, wow. You look a lot different than a lot of those other defensive linemen. The opt-out guys are back. Marvell Tell, Roland Milligan, Sky Moore, they're all back. I found it interesting that Darius Leonard, compared Kwity Paye a little bit to kind of a DeForest Buckner of quiet, reserved to a degree, but then gets on the field and just works.
Yeah.
Just freaking works. So you got to like that. One note that I had that I found interesting, and this was in our interviews with players last week, is Kenny Moore, again, extremely honest in saying that he felt like the chemistry of the secondary on and off the field was an issue last season. That kind of stood out to me as something that, for one, it's a group that struggled in some big games, and Kenny admitted that as well. But then, two, you've brought back pretty much the same exact group. You re-signed Xavier Rhodes. You really didn't draft a corner at all. Rock Ya-Sin obviously is back. Isaiah Rodgers is back. Marvell Tell comes from the opt-out. Of course, you have Kenny. Safety-wise, you lose Tavon Wilson, who's a veteran. But bring back, of course, Kari Wilson, Julian Blackman, who Chris Ballard is extremely high on both of those two. But that'll be something, I guess, to keep an eye on. Kenny, his position coach now is James Rowe, the new cornerbacks coach. He comes from some college background with Kenny Moore. So how does he handle this? And I don't think it's like a massive, massive issue, but the fact that Kenny's willing to share that, it's something to note. And like I've talked about it, that secondary, I think if you're worried about something with this defense, if the pass rush doesn't get going, how much of an improvement has that corner group in particular made? That is, I think, a big storyline. When you do look at the quarterbacks that you face this year, obviously Wilson and Stafford right out of the gate. I don't think it's a quarterback, gauntlet by any means. Yes, you get Brady and Allen back-to-back weeks. You get Kyler Murray late in the year. But you take Watson potentially out for 2 games. Last year you faced Rodgers. It's just not maybe as menacing to me. I probably would have to look a little bit closer to the schedule, but you face a whole lot of young QBs. And then late in the year, I don't think it's murderer's row by any means. So yeah, those are some things that stood out to me. This is an article form. A few more takeaways I had in there. That's up on the website. I'll have another one on Thursday just to recap things, and I'll probably post a depth chart a little bit later.
Okay.
Just to see what I've observed here in the spring. For what it's worth, I think TJ Carey ran out there with Kenny Moore for the first team and not Rock Ya-Sin. Totally fine with that. Rock's got to earn that spot back. TJ Carey earned that spot late in the season. Now, some of it was, I think, a demotion, but some of it was TJ Carey was playing pretty good ball for you. So that is something to watch as well.
Cool. All right, like you said, any other takeaways, go ahead and go to 1075thefan.com. Kev's got that article up and plenty more to come the rest of the week. Let's jump into Twitter questions.
Let's do it.
All right, Bryson wants to talk about train or OTAs, I should say.
Yeah.
I saw that Jacob Eason was taking first-team reps when Carson Wentz was under the weather. Any word on how he performed in those 2 days? He knows he's not going to be the starter, but just curious as to how Jacob Eason's coming along.
Yeah, and Bryson, this probably goes back to my earlier point. They aren't even going up against the defense, and I hate to temper expectations like this, but I got to be honest with what I'm observing out there. I know there were some people out there that are being like, oh, Jacob Eason's taking first-team reps. I'm like, well, that's kind of a bit of a misleading tweet. Like, yes, he's lining up with the starters, but again, they're going against nobody.
Right.
So you have to note that. I think just watching Eason, when he is throwing and it's routes versus air and things like that, that is exactly what he's made for. I mean, his arm strength and that ability with that right arm, it's a howitzer. And I know I've used that term before, but it is certainly that. Just to kind of paint the picture of what we saw from the offense, we got a better look at the defense on Thursday. The offense we're in kind of one end zone, behind one end zone.
Yeah.
There's 2 practice fields. So let's say it's practice field 1 and 2. 1 is on the left, 2 is on the right. We're behind the end zone on 2. The offense was practicing on the opposite end zone on 1, and it was like goal line and red zone. And it's just, again, kind of a sped-up walkthrough of, like, yes, all these receivers going out for routes, you're making reads and throwing them, but, there's no – Darius Leonard is on the other practice field. And so that's, I guess, just a little bit of a picture of how it is. And it is a bummer, Chris, because – and I get it. This is how players across the league have wanted it. The Colts players are not any different than the rest of the NFL. But usually, you're out there for 10 OTAs and 3 minicamp practices. That's 13 sessions of offense, defense, 90-minute, 2-hour sessions that you typically get in the spring. Now, you're never putting on full pads, but still, it is something. And now you have none. You've gone from 13 to 0. And this is a league-wide, I can call it an issue just because, whatever, it's easy for me, but I'm sure if I were a part of the players' union, I would be wanting to be pretty scaled back. So it is severely scaled back. And, as much as, the Colts, I think, publicly are trying to be like, oh, this is great, we're still getting 2 weeks of work in, it's like, well, you do have a new quarterback, and you would like, I think, a little bit more of some offense-defense stuff, because technically OTAs are supposed to start this week. This is the week when you could take part in that, but I don't know. If I were Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, I think publicly you have to say the right things because it is turning into much more of a player league, but I think privately, when you've lost 7 straight season openers and you see the schedule that is sitting there the first 5 weeks, you're probably a little pissed off.
Yeah. Next one comes from Gary. Says it's graduation time, and congrats to all the recent grads and upcoming grads.
Shout out. High school, college, 8th grade, whatever. Hell, kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rosie Bowe going from 1s to 2s.
So it's time for some superlatives. So get ready, Kevin, because he wants to know, worst projected starter offense, defense, and special teams as it Rocky seen?
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Gary's not going super positive here with these.
Gary was quick and to the point.
Yeah, okay. I thought graduation we were going to go positive here. Worst projected starter, offense, defense, special teams. Well, special teams, I just kind of throw it.
Right.
Yeah, I guess Luke Rose is really good at his job. Rigoberto is really good at his job. And Hot Rod's, pretty good at his job. So, worst starter. Well, on defense, Carey was over Rock. Now, when you go to a third corner, well, I guess Carey's still your third corner because Xavier Rhodes would normally be in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say that second defensive end, who is that? Well, honestly, some could make the argument that Tyquan Lewis or Al-Qadim Muhammad will be better than Kwity Paye early on, obviously. I think that's something we just need to keep on reminding ourselves, like it's some high expectations to ask a rookie defensive end come in and give you major production early on. So I'd say maybe whoever is that defensive end. Offensively, who is your worst starter on offense? Seriously, which is a great problem to have. Like, right. I'm going through the starting. Hell, it better not be Wentz.
No.
I'll just say that. If it's Wentz, that's an issue. Mark Lewinsky, that's kind of a slap in the face at Glow, who I thought had a pretty good year. Is it your second tight end? I don't know. I feel like with Mo Alley Cox, it's more just getting consistent playing time. The wideout group, if healthy, Pittman, Hilton, Campbell, that's a good trio. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor speaks for himself. Certainly Sam Tevy, I guess, if Eric Fisher's going to miss some time. But offense is difficult for me. I don't have a great answer there. So
Gary's not setting you up.
No, he's not. Yeah, this is definitely a great. Yeah, maybe I should have put this question a little bit later in the pod here. But yeah, congrats to all of our grads, and boy, congrats to our superlatives that we just laid out there. Thank you for the question, though, Gary. Love you,
Kevin. This one comes from Nick. Can you please address the Julio Jones trade rumors? Is there any chance that he ends up with the Colts? Do we even have the cap room? And if so, what do you think it would cost to get him to the Colts?
Yeah, well, let's start right there. Do we have the cap room, Nick? You can manipulate the cap. The Colts don't really manipulate the cap, so the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little confused, and I know Vegas, honestly, has probably they have the Colts, I think, super high.
Yeah.
With some of these odds, Titans, 49ers, Patriots, whoever else. I don't understand why. I mean, I don't know. I guess the Colts have kind of been like this team with all the cap space over the last 3 or 4 years. They're always kind of on these lists with these big names, and obviously they never really come to fruition. I guess Carson was the only one. But, when you break down the cap, it's about $13.5 million right now. You want to get extensions done for Braden Smith and Darius Leonard. You've got, I don't believe that $13.5 million included all. How many draft picks do you have? 7?
Mm-hmm.
All 7 draft picks? I don't think that included that. And then also, Chris, you have to prepare worst case scenario when you're Chris Ballard and Mike Bloom, and Mike Bloom is our cap expert. And I know this is going to sound doom and gloom, but this is part of your job. Like, if Jacob Eason blanks the bed in preseason, you've probably got to go out and sign a veteran. Now, you can find veteran quarterbacks in late August, but that veteran quarterback's going to command a little money. I mean, we saw what Brian Hoyer got when he came here after the Luck retirement. You've got a little bit of leverage there if you're those quarterbacks. So you got to have some money available, and then you also have to have money available just for that catastrophic camp injury. God forbid, and I won't even name the names, but you guys know the names of a guy or guys that would go down in camp. You've got to go find, I think, somewhat of a frontline starter if you can. Obviously the availability of those guys in the open market. So I guess I'm a little bit confused on just the smoke and the rumors, and I get it, social media. And by the way, I think Julio Jones is a stud.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's debate about where Julio's at this point in his career. Missed a few games last year. 2-3 years ago, there wasn't a better wideout in the league than Julio Jones. So I get it. He's getting up there, but this is no knock on Julio Jones. Like, he could greatly help you out. Sure, does it stunt a little bit of playing time for some of your guys? Yeah, I will also say this. I know skill sets, and I really harped on that last week's podcast, skill sets at wideout. Like, if Paris Campbell's injury trend continues, you're right back with the same wideout group you had last year. Now, you hope Pittman takes a big step forward. And who knows, Patman, somebody else in that group. But you are scrambling a little bit at wideout if really any of those guys get hurt on that. And I guess lastly on it, Chris, for me, I haven't seen Julio trade packages. Have you seen any guesses at what it would take to get him?
I saw Pro Football Focus. They did a mock one where it was the Falcons and the Titans.
Okay.
Trading 5th-round picks next year. Obviously, Titans receiving Julio Jones, and then a 2nd and a 4th round next year as well.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, let's just go with 2nd and 4th for the Colts if they were to have to give that up and throw the 5th round swaps out the window. So that means next year. Now, I don't even know. The Colts probably can't give up their 2nd rounder because it's tied to a current trade. But let's say you're giving up your 1st for Wentz, your 2nd for Julio, your 4th for Julio. You're going into next year's draft with only a 3rd round pick until day 3 and a round into day 3. I could never see Chris Ballard doing it. And I do kind of appreciate this by Ballard. In that draft film room, one of the reasons, and I agreed with this after the Ellinger pick, until you 1,000% have a guy at quarterback, we're still playing cornhole here. We're still trying to throw a bag in there. That's just how you have to approach that position. It means too much. Is Sam Ellinger ever going to take a meaningful snap for the Colts? Maybe not. For Colts fans' sake, outside of a Taysom Hill package, hopefully not, to be frank. But you just, in the back of your mind, it is always this is a possibility. It's very worst case scenario, but if Carson Wentz looks like Carson Wentz from last year, you can't go into next year's draft with 1 pick in the first 4 rounds. Mm-hmm. That you cannot.
No.
So that, I think, plays into some of this Julio stuff. And I get it. I get the win now approach. I get the Super Bowl bound. Julio would certainly raise the ceiling on this 2021 Colts, but there are a lot of ramifications around it. So I know June 1st is kind of a big date, I think, for him and that price tag to the Falcons to save more money. But I do not see this happening.
Yeah.
No.
Kevin, this one comes from Dylan, who's a longtime fan. First time asking a question. I love this on pod. You hear it on sports radio all the time. Long time, first time.
Long time, first time.
This is Dylan. He said, I understand that there's a lot of questions with our offense, but am I crazy for thinking that this could be a highly performing top-tier offense by the end of the season. The variety that our running back group has, a healthy Paris Campbell, the dynamic that is Kylan Granson, and also adding Carson Wentz seems to be like a scary combination for defenses to cover if schemed correctly. Appreciate all you do for Colts Nation. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you, Dylan, and appreciate you listening and chiming in with a question. You know we always love that. I think the wideout group, to me, Chris, has kind of the most volatility of any position group on this team. Or I should say offensively. If things can check out,
yeah,
great potential. Great potential. But like I was just saying, the Campbell injury, you could be kind of right back at square one. Obviously, Fisher staying healthy is vitally important for the offensive line. But, man, when I keep coming back to Taylor and I keep coming back to this run game, it can be really, really, really elite.
Yeah.
Really elite.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets a little bit lost in the shuffle, and I certainly tweeted it out pretty much every Sunday late last season when Taylor started to string together those at least like 70, I think it was 74 yards in every game. He 4 weeks in a row, 5 weeks in a row. So did in the Buffalo game as well. That is such rarefied air for a present-day NFL running back.
Yeah.
Like, guys don't – Derrick Henry doesn't do that. Zeke doesn't do that. I mean, it's wild what that run game did late in the season. Now, Costanzo to Fisher and where he's at health-wise, and I don't know. Now that teams have a full year of film on Taylor, who knows? But that is a group I think we expect an ascension from or whatever, continuing on that level. And if so, yeah, I mean, this offense does have that potential. Now, the things that have to check out. Health at wideout, Fisher at left tackle, and then obviously you keep on coming back to the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But from a run game standpoint, he should have that support. And not every QB, certainly in the league, has that.
No. And I love the quiet confidence that Taylor just plays with.
Yeah, he really does. That's a great way to describe it.
Next one comes from Rod. Out of these players, who would you like to see most have a breakout year, and who do you think is most likely to have a breakout year? Kamoko Toure, Rock Yassin, Kwity Paye, Michael Pittman Jr., and Paris Campbell.
That's a good list. Give those to me one more time.
Kamoko Toure, Rock Yassin, Kwity Paye, Michael Pittman Jr., and Paris Campbell.
Who can help the team the most? And you're going true breakout, it'd be Toure or Paye.
Mm-hmm.
I know Pittman and Campbell would probably be popular, but like Pittman and Campbell have, and I guess Campbell's kind of like Toure. They kind of done the same in the NFL. Pittman's done, I think, a little bit more. But if Paye or Toure goes from here's their current baseline to a breakout, boy, that's big. Whereas I just think Pittman and Campbell have a little bit of a higher floor right now. Who is most likely? Definitely Pittman in my eyes. Paye, I kind of just, it's just tough. Rookie rushers, I think right now you'd sign up for 6 sacks. I know some people would want more, but like I just think flat out, you say where's the dotted line, and you sign up there. I think if you were like, oh yeah, guy's gonna start 15 games and give you 6 sacks, you would do it. Toure and Campbell, they just fall into the health category. So, frankly, if healthy, I would say Campbell probably more than Toure. I still need to see a little bit more from Toure consistently. And I know health has contributed to it. But I do think you have to acknowledge that. With Rock, man, it's just so, to me, it's so mental. And also, Rock's got to go win a job. I think, judging by what we saw last week again, TJ Carey, Xavier Rhodes, Kenny Moore, in the short term, those are the 3 that you're going with. Now, long term, you'd much rather have it be Rock. But, again, you got Wilson and Stafford the first 2 weeks of the season. There's not a lot of just kind of, hey, man, come on in and we'll let you grow. Like, you got to go. So, yeah, I'd probably put Rock a little bit lower on the most likely. But it's much different. He's mental. To me, the other ones are just physical. And Pittman, I mean, I'd feel very confident. A little bit of Rosie daycare I would bet on Michael Pittman taking that jump.
I'm not saying it would happen here, but with this physicality, could Rock ever transition to a safety, or does that just not happen in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has a good frame. I feel like he's a good tackler in space, but it's just like, what doesn't he get lost in the shuffle there too? You know, it's Blackman, it's Willis. You know, it's a fair statement, and obviously versatility on game day is huge, but you really need him at corner. Like, long term, ideally, he would work out at corner. You know, Xavier is 31, whatever he is, and then he's in a contract year as well. So.
All right, another Pro Football Focus question. This one comes from Alec regarding Carson Wentz, who was ranked 23rd when it came to quarterbacks going into next year. At first, he thought 23rd was pretty low, but then in Alec's eyes, as he looked at the group ahead of Carson Wentz, other than Trevor Lawrence, who has yet to take a snap, and Daniel Jones, who he jokingly says can't run without getting eaten up by the turf monster, might be the only guys that he would put behind Carson Wentz. Is there anyone else on the list that you think Carson might be ahead of going into the season?
Yeah, so Alex sent me this, and I clicked on the link. There were a couple names that jumped out to me. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick should be higher. I get it. Fitzmagic does it for a few games, but I just don't think. And then I'm a little turned on Roethlisberger. You know, he certainly had some issues late last season. I always think Kirk Cousins is way too high on some of those lists too. Whatever. I probably take Cousins over Wentz. I don't know. I've never been a big Cousins guy. But I think we have to remember the source, and this is no knock on Pro Football Focus, but like, they're huge on analytics, and the analytics were freaking awful for Carson Wentz last season. Like, again, he led the NFL in interceptions and didn't play the final four games. I mean, his completion percentage was what, like 57, 58? I don't know. It was something terrible. So when you have those numbers, the number site is not going to like you at all. So I understand why they have him ranked 23rd. Now, I don't know how much of this is a projection for 2021, because I think you have to factor that in. So, it's funny. I remember after the first, maybe that Cleveland game last year, Chris, I was on the morning show, and one of our hosts kind of went back and forth with me, and he rattled off all the AFC quarterbacks, and who would you take over Phillip Rivers? And when you start naming quarterbacks, you can get down a rabbit hole of but you also don't watch those quarterbacks every week. Like, we watch Rivers. We're about to watch Wentz every week. So you have a strong critical eye on your own QB. So I think you just naturally, you heavily criticize a little bit more. And at the end of the year, if you're just talking in a one-year vacuum, you couldn't name 5 AFC quarterbacks you'd have rather than Phillip Rivers late last season. So I do think that's something to keep in mind as well, Alec. But, if you're basing it off analytics, it's probably hard to get much higher than top 20 for Wentz. Again, based off what he did last season.
Correct. This one comes from John. Hey, Kevin, assuming every major move that we made this offseason works out, in which he notes Carson Wentz, Eric Fisher, Kwity Paye, Deo Odangbo, and Kylan Granson, but Xavier Rhodes and T.Y. Hilton walk after the season, what are you doing in the 2022 draft, considering that we will be using all of our cap room, more than likely to re-sign our own guys?
Oh, okay. So this takes a little bit of thinking here. So he's got Wentz working out, left tackle working out, defensive end promising, tight end has a nice young piece, but he's saying your top corner and, I don't know, kind of your top wideout are walking. Well, the question I would have then is, does Rock take a jump?
Yeah.
And what about Pittman and Campbell? That would be my next question. Obviously, John doesn't address those, but let's say those are unknowns, or let's just say those guys stay at the same level. My top 3 in the draft would be corner, wideout, left tackle.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far without taking a left tackle. Fisher obviously getting another year older and things like that. But yeah, I mean, if Rhodes and T.Y. are walking and without the known of whatever Rock and Pittman and Campbell did, I'd put corner and wide out first and second on that list.
JJ says Chris Ballard picked up an injured Eric Fisher. Probably won't be ready for at least the first few weeks. Then ask, will the injury matter since the Colts almost always lose their first 2 games?
Oh, there we go, JJ. You and Gary, just the nice optimistic helium intake there early on this Monday morning. One thing that I want to mention on Eric Fisher, and by the way, I thought Stephen Holder, for those that subscribe to The Athletic, had a very well done piece on Achilles injuries and rehabs and how it's not the death sentence that, maybe it once was. And obviously there are some guys that do take 10, 11 months, things like that. But basically I think why the Colts felt so confident with Fisher is, he tears out Achilles in January, late January. They were able to get their hands on him right after the draft, so early May. Mm-hmm. There is a 3-month time frame in Achilles rehabs that is a big indicator of how the rehab is going. And not to get too crazy medical, but it has something to do with basically I think the size of the tendon at that point, or the length of the tendon, something to where they can gauge again how fast the recovery is going to be, how strong that tendon can get in a certain time frame. There's just a better idea of what it looks like. You got to get to 3 months though.
Okay.
Well, think about a Dangbo. He tears it right around Fisher. I think it might have been the same day, late January, and then boom, he's drafted late April. So you would think very close to getting to that 3-month time frame as well there. So I don't know how long Fisher is going to miss, obviously, but I do. And I don't know if I said this last week when we were talking about our Chris Ballard draft film breakdown takeaways, but I walked out of that room feeling a little bit better about Eric Fisher's rehab and his ability to potentially play early in the season than I did walking into that room. I have no freaking idea. The Colts don't even have an idea if he's going to suit up week 1.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just ludicrous to think about. But again, based off how I walked into that room, based off how I walked out of that room, and I don't think I don't think it's just lip service. I don't know why you would say, oh yeah, he's going to be ready week 1 and then him not be ready week 1. I don't think Eric Fisher's presence in the starting lineup is going to get more than about 10 family members of Eric Fisher's, family into the building at Lucas Oil Stadium. I do think, to JJ's point, obviously just the snark, will the injury matter since the Colts almost always lose the first 2 games? I do think we have to acknowledge that going back to the Rivers thing last year, Philip Rivers in the first 5 games of the season, it was a bit up and down. It was not smooth sailing by any means. Even, you go back to when Luck came back, and I know Luck came back from a very serious injury and wasn't familiar with Frank Reich's offense. But, obviously Luck had a few kind of up and down moments there early on, threw a ton of passes early in those first 5 games and before he really settled in and had a great end, and the Colts rattle off, 9 of 10 to end that 2018 season. But I guess what I'm getting at is this. Rivers had a few hurdles, and in that schedule you played the Jags, the Jets, a Vikings team that certainly was struggling, and the 500 Bears. I think the Browns, I guess, was the 5th team that you're playing in that span. They obviously had a really nice season. So that schedule to me is not very daunting. You look at this 5-game schedule, and it is, I think, daunting. So if you get Wentz to have the same performance as Rivers did in those first 5 games, and you flash up this schedule, 2 and 3, that might be something you got to accept. I know a lot of people don't want to do that, and that's not ideal. But what I'm getting at is this. This is a quarterback going to a new team. Same offense, similar offense, but Philip Rivers had that similar offense. And from a workload standpoint, we'll see. Carson might get some preseason reps, whereas Philip didn't get that. But I think that's just stuff that we all have to acknowledge and realize that, and you guys have heard me say this, that last year, the schedule was extremely easy. And this year, you just aren't afforded that same schedule, especially early in the season. So, if Wentz has those hurdles, how does that impact what your record is 5 games in?
We'll stick with Eric Fisher here just for a little bit with a question from Mitch. By and large, Mitch has been in the Trust Ballard camp, but after the last few weeks, he's wavering. Between drafting a redshirt player in the second round and signing Eric Fisher, who might not see the field for the first couple games into the season, he's concerned that Ballard is putting us in an early hole that we can't climb out of. What are the odds that we make it through the no Fisher games with a decent record? As always, thanks for the great work.
Well, Mitch, I'll say this, and I asked Chris Ballard this. I was like, oh, yeah, what are your thoughts on the schedule? Schedule came out the night before. The draft film room. And again, Ballard, hell, he could go off the record. He was like, oh, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, well, that's a stupid question. Kevin, just put your hand back down. But just like adamant, like, I'm not worried about it at all. Not worried about it. I'm like, well, first 5 games, Eric's injury. Yeah, I'm not worried about it. And, like, part of it is, okay, that's fine to, like, say in front of a team, but I thought he'd be a little bit more. I just frankly believe that's his opinion. He's just like, I'm good. Schedule's schedule.
Who's ever the next in front of you, you just go through, huh?
So, and then I guess, Mitch, to your point, it kind of comes back to, again, where is Fisher? Does he miss 2 games? Does he miss 4 games? Is there rust when he comes back? Like, those are the hard predictors that you have. So I understand where you come from, Mitch, and I know there are people that don't love the whole so much eggs in your Achilles basket. But I do think it's a bit of an unknown of just where is Fisher at and when will he be ready. And frankly, I don't think the Colts care. Yeah.
Matt, if you're out there listening here on this dreary Monday, don't let your boss know because you say that he wants to thank you first off because his productivity at work goes down every time you release a podcast.
Shit. Don't tell your boss.
Of the following 2 players, which is having a monster/breakout season will lead the Colts to the type of season that fans everywhere are expecting? Paris Campbell or Kamoko Toure?
Oh, that's a great question. Following 2 players, which one having master will lead to? I probably shouldn't mumble. I should probably just repeat the question. Of the following 2 players, which one having a monster breakout season will lead the Colts to the type of season fans everywhere are expecting? Paris Campbell, Kamoko Toure. Oh, this is a great question. This is a question that I asked Jim Aiello when I was filling in for JMV on Friday as well. I thought, Matt, this is a terrific question. Jim and I differed. Jim said Campbell. I say Toure. Now, Jim made a great point in that he feels, I think, a little bit better about the wideout depth. No. Excuse me.
The defensive line depth.
Defensive end depth. You have Banigou, you have Pay. Who knows? You would hope that somebody emerges. Where I say Toure more than Campbell is, for one, I think, again, you guys have heard me say this, edge rusher is the second most important position on the field. It can cover up a lot of mistakes. I also think it's easier to scheme up stuff offensively than scheme up a pass rush.
Yeah.
That's just me flat out and how I view that. Now, Campbell's different. Like, Campbell's unique, and I totally acknowledge that. It's a great question, but to me, it is Toure because edge rush means that much. You could rely on your run game for a whole lot offensively. You could scheme up some stuff in the pass game. But for me, you can't do that with the edge rush. And I know, yes, you do have Banigou, you do have Pay, but like Toure at least has shown several flashes in the NFL. So it's a really good question, Matt. I have a feeling you would get different answers on that, but I will go with Kamoko Toure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Colts Nation loves Paris Campbell, and we want to see the best out of him. And we know how dynamic, hopefully, he can be when he gets in. But like you mentioned, rushing the quarterback is just different in the NFL.
Yeah, flat out. Very, very different.
All right, 3 more. This one comes from Travis. Ballard said that Eric Fisher's signing works. He would like to sign him to a long-term deal. How do you see this being possible, considering Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith's contracts are on the horizon? Do you release or trademark Lewinsky, replacing him with Danny Pinter, and that will possibly help? Yeah. Some say it's impossible that the numbers on our offensive line, but do you think many would have let Anthony Costanzo walk away in 2020 had he wanted to still play?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have let AC walk. The Glowinski thing, I'm pretty sure he's in a contract year this year. I would have to go back and look that up. Now, with Pinter, they think he's got a higher ceiling at center than guard. Now, unless Ryan Kelly gets hurt, he's never playing center. So that's a little bit more difficult to figure out. I think right now it's like at $90 million, $89 million in cap for next year. Obviously, that will go, a chunk of it to Braden, a chunk of it to Darius. Naeem Hines, I think, deserves an extension, a chunk of it there. What do you do with Rhodes and Hilton? Two guys on one-year deals. I think you can make it work, to be honest with you. Now, it's going to take, and I think I talked a little bit about this on the podcast, take a little bit of a kind of cap magic. I don't know about magic. Just a little bit of a juggle with the cap of like going from roster bonuses to signing bonuses. Do you space some of that stuff out a little bit more? But I just think O-line means so much to Ballard. I feel like he'll make that work. And I think really where the roster is going to get hit is kind of in the middle. Some of the guys, we can sign him for 1 year, $3 million, and he might barely play defensively. Maybe you just don't make as many of those moves. I think that's where you're going to see your roster get hurt a little bit there. So letting Glowinski walk and inserting Danny Pinter, sure. Something that I would probably explore. But again, I don't know how much they view Pinter as a 100% starting guard.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just make some of these guys the Bobby Bonilla trade or Bobby Bonilla deal and just pay them over the next 40 years?
I mean, shit, the Pacers are still paying Monta Ellis.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Next one comes from Riley. Do you think Paris Campbell will be able to compete for the number 1 role? In our first game last year against the Jaguars, he was the best wide receiver on the field, in their opinion.
Do you think Paris Campbell will be able to compete for the number 1 role in our first game? Yeah. I mean, he was. I mean, he outsnapped T.Y. Hilton in that game. I'll say this. Pittman is your number 1. Like, blocking, does it all. I mean, Pittman was also outsnapping Hilton late in the season. So, I think, honestly, from a pure playing time standpoint, if everybody's healthy, Pittman and Campbell will be on the court. Oh, shit. God, I'm losing it. We should just end the podcast. On the field, gridiron, pitch, whatever you want to call it, more than T.Y. Hilton. And it kind of goes back to my, T.Y., it's make the most out of those reps.
Yeah.
Make the most, those big-time moments. Can you really step up there? I think Pittman is your number 1. I think Campbell's kind of a close second. And again, this is more me talking playing time, less production. And then Hilton is that definite third. I mean, hell, their games were probably Pascal. Played a ton of snaps. Now, obviously Campbell was hurt, but still, I mean, Pascal's the guy that they want on the field quite a lot as well.
Last Twitter question for this week's podcast comes from Jonathan, and he wants to know, who has been your favorite and least favorite player to interview during your career?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll just go with kind of this current Colt group. Maybe I'll throw in a few that are from the past. My least favorite, and Braden Smith is a horrific quote. Quentin Nelson's awful. Justin Houston got better. At times, he'd be like, why am I even here? Marlon Mack, not great. Which, again, a lot of this means, like, some of these guys are just really humble. And they don't want to be overly honest. And some of them just hate the media.
Right.
As well. So you probably have to acknowledge about that. Kenny Moore can kind of be hit or miss. Sometimes Kenny's good, but other times not great. Favorite, I love Hines. I know we've played his audio on this podcast. I think DeForest Buckner is really good. Leonard, tremendous, brutally honest. Ryan Kelly, extremely honest as well. I think Jonathan Taylor is pretty good as well. I mean, Luck was a horrible quote. Yeah, Rivers was really good. So, yeah. I mean, honestly, I appreciate a little bit of respect and candor more than anything.
Right.
Obviously, Jacoby didn't give. Yeah, Jacoby and I had a few that weren't great. Like, yesterday, I'm watching Mickelson after the round, and I'm like, dude, Phil, I've heard you talk. Like, you love to talk. Give us a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe in that moment, Phil's just so caught up with with emotions, and boy, I mean, you could really tell he was so into that breathing thing all day. I mean, he gets through those massive throngs of people, and he's just like standing there breathing. I'm like, this isn't yoga. Like, kind of let it out, Phil. But whatever, you're in those arenas, it's different. But selfishly, just some respect, candor. That's what I would like. I would want. Something we listen to so much Indy 500 coverage this month. And what I love about the sport is just how forthcoming and available these owners and drivers and strategists are. I mean, it's unfreaking believable how Charlie Kimball is out of the Indy 500 and that heart is broken, and boom, 30 seconds later, you got a mic in his face and he's talking.
Yeah.
And that's just like part of it. And if Will Power would have been out in his incredible resume, he would have had to have done the same thing in those moments. You're interviewing the strategists and the whatever engineers during races. Talk to us. What's your strategy? 20 laps to go. What are you thinking right now? I mean, that's much more insightful than here's whatever. Mike Fratello's interviewing Nate Bjorkgren going into the fourth quarter. It's like, whoop-de-doo. You got to get back and take a charge.
Right.
It's just I really, really appreciate it. Now, I get it. The NFL doesn't have to be that open because they are the giant, and IndyCar needs to be that open. Right now we're watching that F1 documentary.
Yeah.
Have you watched that?
On Netflix?
Yeah.
I've not, but I had a buddy recommend it.
Yeah, really good. And we're kind of in the middle of season 3 right now, which I think is the last season. Basically, one of the drivers goes from, I don't know, Haas to whatever, Ferrari or something. And they have the two owners of the team right up there after this happens, sitting on the same podium talking about this. Like, it'd be like Carson Wentz is traded, and here's Jeffrey Lurie and Jim Irsay on the podium together talking about this. Like, it is just... And again, auto racing, you probably need to do a little bit more just because your sport isn't on, network TV and whatever. The TV audience isn't already where it is, but...
You're still human. I mean...
Yeah, exactly. I'm such a big fan of it. So, and I would put Chris and Frank Reich more on the candid side of it. Certainly Chris.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, Frankie hates talking about injuries, which I get it. But, yeah, I would say of the coaches, he is much more on that. And no one's Bruce Arians, but he is pretty close to that scale. So, yeah, Jonathan, there's my media rant for the week.
Well, as we wrap things up, obviously we teased it in the beginning of the podcast, but this weekend, greatest spectacle in racing, Indianapolis 500. Great to see a lot of fans out at the track. Who are you going with, Kev?
Okay, Dixon is head, but my pick is going to be Tony Kanaan.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one hates TK.
Yep. No one hates him at all. I just feel like the Wiley vet, he's on the same team. He's Chip Ganassi Racing, so him and Dixon are on the same team, and I think he'll be there late in the race, I should say. He's a daredevil, and the dude doesn't even race, full-time anymore. So you're going to go all out there to make something happen. Obviously, Dixon, Dixon's resume is incredible. Won Indy 500, so it's not like he needs another, but I don't think he kind of needs another. If you want to potentially be in the same breath of Mario and whoever, I do think Dixon needs one more. So I will go with Tony Kanaan, and you will go with...
I'm going with Alexander Rossi.
Oh, I like that as well. I've got good scratch on
We
Alexander.
both got guys that live local.
Yeah.
Practice and stay here throughout the season, so... I don't know. Last year he was at the tail end and then started making that climb before the unfortunate wreck. And obviously, when you're already an Indy 500 winner and you know the track, I'm going to give you a little hat tip.
Yeah, I was hoping he'd get in that Fast 9. He just missed it though. But that's a very good pick as well. So for those of you that don't follow IndyCar and have no idea what we're talking about, check it out. 12:30, I want to say, green flag on Sunday.
Yeah, and you'll be out there on Carb Day.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be out there on Carb Day. So, yeah, definitely Friday practice, I think 11 to 1, I believe, their final practice session as well. So I'm looking forward to that. So everybody have a great week. Hopefully weather cooperates as well. Like I said, I'll be out at Colts practice Thursday, so look for a recap on that Thursday afternoon up on our site. And we'll come back next week with another pod looking back on that. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been Kevin Bowen. Thank you for listening to another edition of Kevin's Corner. If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher for the best Colts and Pacers coverage.